I'm Tim, also known as MOTHLORD. I'm the singer from Munt. We're about to release our technically third EP, Pain Ouroboros, this Friday, where it's kind of hard to pigeonhole us. I guess we're a mix of black metal, death metal, kind of modern hardcore, and with a tinge of sludge thrown in there. Yeah, so that's us.
Very cool, mate. Thanks for joining us today, brother.
No problem.
So, Munt have released Apostate Sermon, the final single from your new EP, Pain Ouroboros, which is due out on March the 3rd, mate. So before we get on to the album, tell us a bit about the single Apostate Sermon from a musical perspective and what you're going for with it.
I think it's just like it's taking everything that we've already done before, pushing it even further. That song was written by Spud in particular, who's the founder of the band. I think he was writing that through the lockdowns as well. So I think a bit of the venom he's probably feeling went into that song. It's probably the most black metal sounding song on the release as well. Like, it really has that bitter energy to it. Yeah, I think it's my favorite track as well. Like, it's really got an epic feel. I mean, lyrically, it's probably where I come in a little bit more on that one. It's really focusing on like kind of the idea of letting go of previous philosophical ways of thinking that have held you down and then having to reforge yourself anew. Like, there's a lot of religious metaphor and symbolism in the language there that might come across just a little bit in the music video as well. Yeah, no, it's a fucking belter.
Okay, no, she is. So tell us a bit about the title Apostate Sermon, mate, and what it represents.
I guess like an apostate, by the dictionary definition, is someone who like defies or rejects like religion or like a political way of thinking. And obviously a sermon is, I guess it's like almost like a paradox. It's like a sermon would be something you'd think of in a religious context, but instead it's a sermon for people who've shed that skin, so to speak. Yeah. Like the opening line is, "My brethren, I sing a song of joyful wrath." So it's kind of a call to arms and like a message for like-minded people.
Yeah, very cool. And that song follows on from your last single, The Vengeful March. So would you say that those two songs are a good sonic representation of the album as a whole?
Oh, yeah, I reckon. I think we very intentionally chose those two songs to do music videos for. I mean, like I said, Apostate's a bit more of the black and epic sound, whereas Vengeful March is a little bit more on the percussive, like hard-hitting, grindy sound of things. So it's very good representation of what we're about at the moment.
Yeah, cool. So we'll move on to the album, not to the EP. So what does the title actually mean of the album? It's hard to say, so what does it mean?
Yeah. So that's one that Sol came up with. And he came up with the idea, but it actually worked really well for the themes that I was writing about. I mean, he's obviously, he's one of the people I kind of bounce my lyrical ideas off of anyway, so he's pretty tuned in. I think it was just something that came to him, honestly. And for how it has worked out for the whole record is, I guess, even though every single song's about something different, and I found it hard to tie it all together, the titles kind of brought it together. Like, it's that the Ouroboros is the serpent that devours itself. It devours its own tail. And, you know, I guess the Pain Ouroboros, it's kind of reflective of our society, how we've been, especially over the last several years, well, over history, really. Like the self-destructive cycles, the sadistic and the masochistic tendencies that are driving us to destroy ourselves. I guess that's, yeah, it's the encapsulation of all of those ideas. Like the first song, Children of Delirium, is about like hysteria when people go into panic mode and like turning on one another. What's next? I think Communion of Thorns is about like self-destruction. Vengeful March is like more of a kind of a political commentary on like rising up against corrupt powers, and then when does that maybe go too far and become just like Pyrrhic and destroying everything. Apostate sermon is like destroying yourself to start over, and zero sum is just like the economy. We're just destroying ourselves as inflation gets worse and everything. We're all just going to drown in it.
Yeah, cool. I'm glad you actually sort of touched on those songs and gave us a brief insight, because there are 5 tracks on the EP. So I want to run through them individually and just tell us a bit more about the song and what you're going for musically with it. So we'll start off with the first track, which is Children of the Delirium.
Yeah. So that one musically, I actually haven't contributed song-wise anything to this EP release in particular. So this one was written by Spud, and it's an interesting song because it's not that we didn't almost use it, but it was hard. There's a main riff in that almost has like this Black Dahlia Murder feel, and we're a very grindy black metal band, and we're like, damn, it's almost a little bit too fun, but it really worked. Lyrically, I'm not really sure how I came up with everything. I guess we're kind of a band that we throw everything into a pot and it somehow works. So yeah, that one, I guess it builds off. It's kind of like a sequel song in my mind to a song off our last EP, which is Cleansing the World with Sickness and Disease. The next song, Vengeful March. Again, I think I just remember Spud, he wrote that one, was just really pissed off at the state of the world, and you really feel it through that song. I think a working title for that song, actually a working title for the previous song was called Spore, which is where I came off the idea of hysteria infecting people. And I feel like we could have almost stuck with that name because of the way the song just feels like everything's getting crunched together. The next song is Communion. That's one of Soul's songs. He just one day just dropped the song in our little chat that we've got out of the blue. It was like, here's a new song. We're like, fuck, this is sick. I don't really have his insight in his thinking behind that. I think maybe like listening to, because there's like this kind of breakdown pattern in it. I think maybe like the last Code Orange record had come out around that time and we'd all like been frothing it a bit. So I think maybe that found its way into that song. And Zero Sum, that's another soul song, very grindcore, almost Napalm Death feel to it, which is very much one of the bands that he really likes. Yeah, I don't know. Do you want me to go into like the themes again? Because I've already gone over that.
That's fine. Yeah, it sort of explains them a lot better.
Yeah, so I guess let me go back then. So then the last one was, I've already spoken about Apostate Sermon, which is a Spud song. So yeah, Children of Delirium, like I think I wrote that, it was kind of just as a response to participating in the debate about everything that was happening in the world with like the lockdowns, the pandemic, vaccines, people being afraid of one another. And it's not me taking any particular side. And it's not one of those things I feel like it's going to be useful to open up, because it's still a very contentious thing for people. But there's, just a way that they become afraid of their own mortality, and people really turning on one another, cutting each other off for their decision to, whether they want to get vaccinated or they don't want to get vaccinated, whether people are going out in public and breaking lockdown. Like people were like, it's just a really crazy thing to live through. And that was something that I was going off of, that like wasn't really about the pandemics and lockdown, but there's a line in that which is true horror is man. And it's kind of like, in a survival situation, people can turn on one another, and that's pretty fucking scary. So yeah, the next one was Vengeful March. Like I wrote that, I think it was around the time that the Capitol Hill riots happened, I reckon, in America. And it was just like, everyone was like, oh, fuck all these, right-wing people, fucking Donald Trump and all that stuff. And I was just thinking like, I might not even agree with them, but people, when they really believe in a cause, they'll go out of it, they'll do whatever they have to do to make a difference. and they truly believe that, you know, and not everyone can understand each other's side. Again, that's not me taking a side with that, but I guess it raised questions of, even for how I think politically, like how far do we need to go when we need to respond to tyranny? And then when the song came out, it was it was just after everything with Ukraine that was going on. And I'm sure the people in Ukraine would very much say that given their circumstances, they've got to do what they've got to do, you know, to protect themselves and everything. What was the next? Communion of Thorns. That one is actually a pretty personal one, because I have struggled with mental health my whole life. And I guess it was a song about like beating yourself up and like telling yourself, like, I have harm OCD. If anyone doesn't know what that is, I guess it's where you're so afraid of causing harm to other people, you know, I guess you imagine how you might accidentally cause harm to people or whatever, and don't have the intention. It's the complete opposite. And I kind of injected that anxiety into that song about, I guess, I mean, Communion of Thorns is just kind of a cool name, but I guess like the idea of you're drinking in something destructive every time you're telling yourself, or things are never going to get better, or I'm not good enough, or all those kinds of things. Zero Sum, yeah, that one, I think it was because it sounded like Napalm Death to me. The words kind of just came to me, and I guess it was just thinking about, the cost of living and everything, inflation, all that stuff that's going on. And I mean, you know, I'm not an economist, so I don't claim to have any perfect answers, and sometimes in metal you over exaggerate things to tell a story. But I think we can all agree that things are getting pretty bad. People are starting to drown under the weight of cost of living, like rent. Like people I know, their landlords turning to them and being like, yeah, your rent's going to go up by $200 in a couple of weeks. You know, either stay or get out. And that's just one example. I mean, I work as a youth worker. I'm actually studying social work as well, and hearing from families who are struggling heaps. Like more and more people are becoming homeless. Like it's pretty fucking grim.
It is.
I guess it kind of fits our music, you know, that kind of, before I go into the last song, like the name Munt, I don't know if you were going to ask about it, but when I joined Spud, other than being like, I can't believe no other Aussie band had the name Munt as a band name, he said to me, it's like, because you're writing about all this stuff that makes you sick in the world. Because if anyone doesn't know, to Munt is to throw up, to be sick. So I guess that's kind of the underlying current with a lot of our themes, honestly. Things that piss you off, but I try to go about it in a thoughtful way. And yeah, the last one, Apostate Sermon, is a little bit more of a personal thing, but also it's for everyone else. Like a lot of people have grown up. If you've grown up religious, you might understand what it's like to have to maybe realize that's not what you want to believe in, what works for you, and you have to then rebuild yourself. You know, it's hard actually for a lot of people who've not lived like that. Like I know people who've been raised atheist or whatever, and they can't understand what it's like to be told when you're a child, oh, God's got a plan, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. And then when you drop that, you're like, damn, I'm out on my own in this world. And like, am I just going to bury my head in the sand, or am I gonna like fight the universe and find my own way and be okay with the fact that there's, you know, not some heaven waiting for me, you know, at the end. You know, now is the life we have is what you've got to make of yourself, which is not directly said in the song, but it's part of it. You know, it might sound like really grim and negative and ragging on Christianity, but it's actually very optimistic, you know? Yeah. So that's the themes for all the songs.
Cool. I wish I'd known that before I sat down and did the review. It would have made it a lot easier. So, Munt are a band who are very well known and respected for your live shows, mate. So have you got any plan to promote the EP?
Oh, yep. We're just in the process of trying to line up some good shows, like a good EP release show. And we've got plans to do some interstate shows later in the year. I can't say anything about that just yet, but it's in the works and it should be really great. So hopefully we're going to not only, we'll be playing in Melbourne, but hopefully we can get around to as many other cities and locations as possible. Yeah.
Sounds good to me. All right, brother. Well, thanks very much for your time tonight. Pain Ouroboros is out on March the 3rd, and say I've had to listen to it and fucking swept me off my feet, brother. It was a very, very good effort. So hopefully everyone else out there gets into it as well.
Thanks, mate. I really appreciate that.
No worries at all. And look us up when you come up to Queensland, mate. I'll come along to the Brisbane show.
I will. We'll make sure we get up there.
Too easy, my man. All right, take care of yourself, bro. And good luck with the album or EP.
All right, thanks. See ya.